Hello and welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
I am Adam Summers, and you are in Season 6 of Wrestling at Random, which, if you've been listening, you know the theme for Season 6 is more wrestling than ever, and that is a larger font. It is more bold. It is more underlined. It may even be italicized, all compared to Season 5. We had a lot available to us in Season 5, but Season 6 is absolutely insane. Upwards of, 60,000 hours of professional wrestling, both public and dark web adjacent sources have all been dumped into the randomizer. The randomizer picks something for us to watch, truly non-gimmicked, legitimately random, and that is what we watch. A lot of times, with that many entries, it can be very much off the beaten path. This week, it is very much on the path. However, I guess we could say it's something that when we started this podcast in 2020, we couldn't have reviewed this because it was not yet 10 years old. Now, as we record this, it is 10 plus years old, that being WWE SummerSlam 2013 from the Staples Center in Los Angeles, California, August 18th, 2013.
SummerSlam, this is not the first time the randomizer has chosen it. So like you mentioned, we fire up the randomizer. It goes through all of the internet's wrestling content. It picks something for us to watch at random. It has chosen SummerSlam from 2013. This is not our first time reviewing a SummerSlam event. The randomizer back in Season 3, Episode 6 of this free feed that you're listening to right now. We reviewed SummerSlam 1996, Shawn Michaels versus Vader. That had a horrible tag team title match.
Yeah, the four-way tag title match, which was basically a time capsule of look how bad the tag team division was in the WWF in 1996.
Yeah, so if you haven't listened to that episode, in that episode, I recap the history of SummerSlam and all of the information. As we do this podcast, we always like to give you a history of what we're talking about here. We will not be doing that because I already covered it. Season 3, Episode 6 of the free feed. If you want more SummerSlam content at the end of this, you can get that from our bonus feed over at patreon.com/wrestling at random. There, we do extra bonus episodes every single week. Over there, episode 132 of the bonus content, we reviewed SummerSlam 1992 from Wembley in London. That's a tremendous one. We also, back in episode 86, we had a curated list of Bret Hart matches, and one of them was from SummerSlam 94, featuring his match against Owen Hart from Chicago. And with that, we will get into SummerSlam 2013. The big, I think, the big overarching sentiment of this show is there's the classic WWE main event scene, John Cena's, Randy Orton's, Batista's coming back. You have the mainstay regular players, Triple H, of course, and then you've got a couple of guys in Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan in the WWE, and CM Punk, who are in the main event scene. Do they have the full backing of the company machine as the guys? Not to the same level as the other guys, but at this time in WWE, it was like watching the indie band that you saw play the small clubs get to do the big arena tour, and they're now mainstream. People are, have you ever heard of this band? And you're like, yeah, I saw them at the Double Door on the north side of the Chicago in when they were nothing. They were opening up for nobody, and now there's something.
Literally me. I mean, I saw Bryan Danielson and CM Punk at not only Ring of Honor, whatever 800,000 people at any given time at Chicago Ridge, but saw the IWA Mid-South. They always go back to the TPI, September 2004. So just about 9 years prior to this, 300 people sold out. Both Danielson and CM Punk were in that tournament on that weekend of shows, and so I was 100, I wasn't watching him in WWE, but I was telling my friends who are wrestling fans who watch WWE, like, yeah, you see these guys wrestling in front of 20,000 people. I saw them when they were, the equivalent of the small indie band playing the double door or Shubas or something like that.
And we'll get to it when we get to the Bryan Danielson match. But yeah, Daniel Bryan was so popular, and it was all organic. The machine wasn't behind him, and the way he got over because he was over, and it's so cool to see someone that they didn't believe in, and they ended up steering into it. And we'll get into a little bit of
Well,
that
we
later.
detailed that in great detail, that early NXT episode we reviewed when
Yes.
NXT was still basically the obstacle course variety show slash let's bury the guy from the Indies who happened to be Bryan Danielson on that show. You talked about like getting over organically. That's exactly what happened. And the funny thing was they would always try to tack something onto what got over organically, and it would never take. Like there was a time where didn't they try to make Big Show the yes guy instead of Danielson? Like there are a couple times where they tried to take the yes heat, take the yes overness, and move that to someone else who is a more WWE guy, and it didn't take. And then we'll also see here, like, yes got super over. So then the whole thing with Danielson during this time was fear the beard. And like, I barely had any recollection of that. Like everyone remembers, yes, Fear the Beard, which is, a team of 40 soap opera writers, I'm sure came up with that. And nobody remembers that.
No, and it's just great to see a guy who did it with his talent, and to their credit, and some of it was because CM Punk ends up quitting the company in early 2014, and it completely changes the plans for what WrestleMania 30 was going to be, and they steered into it, and it became Daniel Bryan's moment. But on the way to there, we are at SummerSlam. This is August of 2013, and it's August 20. This is August of 2013.
August 18th, 2013.
18th. That's it. We'll get into the whole show recap here, and we will talk at length about those two matches because they were basically the double main event of this show. Featured both a Punk match and a Daniel Bryan match. We'll get into all of that as we recap the show here. The host of SummerSlam is The Miz.
For my money, if you're going to have The Miz on a show, make him the host, not because he's entertaining as a host, but then that means I don't have to see him as like world champion or something. I don't understand the obsession that WWE had with hosts for pay-per-views, guest hosts and guest GMs for Raw. Like, it's so superfluous.
The funniest part about The Miz to me is that this man has had the exact same character for nearly 20 years, and I can't think of a parallel in wrestling. Hulk Hogan didn't even have the same character for 20 years. It's hard to think of someone.
The closest I would say is Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah, I think that's probably the closest.
And they also have startlingly similar finishers with the stroke and the skull crushing finale, which are very, very similar. The thing I noticed right away, like The Miz comes out and we see this huge LED stage, and it looks so ugly and dated. Like this was cutting edge for 2013, but now compared to like the big, bright, crazy stages you see in WWE, it looks so dated, which to me is always an argument for why not to go this route, because no matter how great it looks at the time, it's always going to look worse 5-10 years later. Whereas a show that just has like a really cool set, a cool stage, a video screen, cool ring apron that's not LED, all that sort of stuff, like that looks as good now as it did back then.
He's interrupted by Fandango and Summer Rae, who come out to dance around The Miz and this segment. Okay.
So do they have a Dancing with the Stars gimmick? Is that what this is?
Kinda, yeah.
Like the only thing I remember about Fandango was the issue with Jericho and the putting him over or whatever, opening match of a pay-per-view, that whole deal. Like outside of that, I don't get it.
We get a video hyping up the two main events, and then JoJo from Total Divas cast. She comes out and sings the national anthem. She was also Bray Wyatt's fiance at the time of his passing.
Did you know that SummerSlam is the biggest party of the summer?
So I heard, and if you're playing a drinking game, you will die.
Yes, you will be. Yes, you and the drink will be one by about an hour into the show. So we transitioned from that to Kane coming out to the ring. So our broadcasting, we should mention, is Michael Cole, JBL, and a little bit of Jerry Lawler throughout the show. He's there. He doesn't say much. He really serves no purpose other than just to be able to say Jerry Lawler is on this show. Kane comes out and he says, if you can't stand the heat, don't tickle the dragon. What?
Justin Roberts is your ring announcer. Ugh. And we've got a Ring of Fire match to open up the pay-per-view. It is the aforementioned Kane taking on Bray Wyatt. This is Bray Wyatt's debut in the ring. This presentation of the Wyatt family being presented as psycho hillbillies, was a great gimmick. I think it was tremendous. By
far the best presentation that Bray Wyatt ever had. I agree. There weren't many things outside of CM Punk, Bryan Danielson in WWE that grabbed me, but I remember seeing these vignettes and actually being really intrigued. He was, it was, Waylon Mercy meets, whatever Southern stereotype you want to say, but it worked, obviously with Brody Lee. What was Brody Lee?
Luke Harper and Eric Rowan.
Eric Rowan, who I remember Eric Rowan having one really rough tour of Noah before this, years before this. But just a perfect, I guess WWE with all the writers, they probably would call it casting. What a perfect presentation of these three guys together. The lamp, there was no hint of like supernatural, paranormal.
No, this is just
activity.
We're crazy hillbillies. We're scary hillbillies.
It was also, it was so, it was WWE, but it's also not WWE, in that WWE usually isn't good at subtlety. They usually beat you over the head with something. And the idea of what they did later with him, what he did later, there was so much more WWE. Like, this felt like almost, again, like crossing Waylon Mercy with like 82 Florida Kevin Sullivan.
Yeah, it's a great entrance. He's got the lantern and the song and all that stuff is just a tremendous presentation. The match itself, a Ring of Fire match, is dumb. It's got around the ring a flame that will, every time there's a big bump, the flames get really high for a second. It's dumb.
A few things. First, Jerry Lawler says, we've never seen anything like a Ring of Fire match in WWE. This is an Inferno match under a different name. It's literally the exact same thing when Kane had Inferno matches before. There's the like rallying around the ring that, the fire, like you said, anyone takes a bump and the fire shoots up, which is just ridiculous. But the idea behind this at least was sound. Why they were having this match was that it was to keep Rowan and Harper out. But yeah, there was a Ring of Fire chant of all things. I was hoping at this point that Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire would play and it would be like a New Jack match, or it would just be playing all the way through. But then I also started to think, well, if we're watching the WWE Network version of this, how would the dubbed music they would choose to take the place of Ring of Fire, how would that compare to In the Ghetto?
From New Jack's song.
The dubbed song for New Jack, because they couldn't use his actual music.
This match, the whole reason they have this Ring of Fire match is to keep Rowan and Harper from being able to interfere. So, like, immediately, Harper and Rowan cover the flames with, like, a blanket so they can enter the ring. They attack Kane. Bray hits Sister Abigail, gets the pin. After the match, Rowan and Harper smash Kane's head in the safest way possible with the stairs in the post-match.
Yeah, it wasn't quite immediate, but it was pretty quick. Like they did some stuff for a few minutes, and then they throw that flame retardant blanket over. The thing that I like, we talked about, the entrance and the presentation, how cool it was for Bray Wyatt, and it felt like actual creepy instead of like cartoonish. That all ended the second this match started. The match, the post-match, that horrible business exposing stare shot, this all came off really cartoonish. And to me, like, remembering back what those early promos were and then like seeing them come out, like I felt so much less into this act and the idea of what they were going to be coming out of this than I did going into it.
Fun fact, one of the firefighters during this match,
it was Todd Champion, or no, it was Firebreaker Chip of the
Special
the
Forces,
WCW Special Forces.
No, it was actually Scorpio Sky was one of the firefighters.
There you go. I guess Los Angeles guy. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. We go to a panel. It's Josh Matthews, Booker T, Shawn Michaels, and Vicky Guerrero on the panel. They say nothing. Somehow they were shocked by the Ring of Fire match. Not shocked at how horrible it was.
I hate these panels that they will do from time to time because it's the idea is, oh, look at us, we're we're like a
sports presentation.
But like on a sports panel, even the wackiest of them, football, hockey, baseball, anything, like there will be actual insight or people will have takes. They may be garbage takes, but they're takes that actually are like. Whereas this, everyone's so non-committal. Everyone's just saying the most obvious thing. Like, if that's what you're going to do, then just don't do it.
Paul Heyman cuts a pre-taped promo. Tonight will be a no disqualification match in the Punk and Lesnar match to come. Damian Sandow comes out. He's the Money in the Bank winner. So he's got, he won the Money in the Bank. He talks about how Cody Rhodes was his lackey, his sidekick. They were a tag team called Team Rhodes Scholars, and the Rhodes Scholars are exploding here at SummerSlam.
This is just the lamest of the lame of this era of mid-card WWE. Damian Sandow calls himself the intellectual savior of the masses. He's basically doing a non-rhyming version of the Genius here on this in this promo, getting the what treatment. Then Cody comes out. He has truly awful music. Like people complain about like Def Rebel music and WWE in 2024, 2025, which isn't great, but this is horrendous. So while this entrance is happening, Michael Cole tells us that we have to go to the WWE YouTube channel. Actually, no, it's the channel for the JBL and Cole YouTube show for the exclusive information on why Cody Rhodes doesn't have a mustache. Michael Cole will not tell us. JBL will not tell us. This is a hook to get us to go and I assume like and subscribe their YouTube channel.
He's no longer dashing Cody Rhodes. He has no mustache. Okay. I don't need any more information than that.
Small, short, black trunks and or gold trunks, I should say. No, the usual no knee pads, just awkward look. Sandow just has blank black trunks and purple knee pads. Just looks like such a complete non-entity. Apparently, Sandow turned on Cody Rhodes at Money in the Bank and then Cody threw his Money in the Bank briefcase into the Gulf of Mexico.
So the highlights of this match, Rhodes hits a muscle buster at one point.
Yeah, I was not expecting that. That was a highlight. Lowlights, Damian Sandow's elbow of disdain, which is, you guessed it, another lame version of a people's elbow. And then he puts this weird half sharpshooter on that just, I am not I'm not impressed by Damian Sandow as anything here.
Cody hits the crossroads and gets the pin. It's amazing to see this guy and say, 10 years later, this guy's going to be main eventing WrestleMania and like the biggest babyface you have.
Well, the
like,
biggest babyface they've had in years, the biggest merch seller they've had in years, one of the catalysts of, if you want to
in
call
10
what they're
years from this.
in 2025, a boom period. Like, he's the guy. And here he is just the definition of a guy. It is crazy, though, that like Damien Sandow's the Money in the Bank winner, and he just unceremoniously loses a short nothing match to lower mid-card Cody Rhodes here on SummerSlam.
We get a Christian video package, tons of highlights of his career. As a prelude to the World Heavyweight Championship, the challenger is Christian, the champion, Alberto Del Rio. We've talked a lot about Alberto and his WWE run in the past. The most popular post that we've ever had on our Instagram page is we posted the 1-2-3 Kid, X-Pac against Chris Hamrick. Okay, millions of views,
legitimately millions of views. The gif of Chris Hamrick taking the Chris Hamrick bump off a low kick from the 1-2-3 Kid.
Yes, that, and we've got over 1 million likes on that and comments. It's by far the most viral thing we've ever done.
Not monetizable, sadly, but
no, we've posted that clip. That's the most viral thing. I bring it up here because Del Rio does the Hamrick bump and just wipes himself out on the floor. Brutal.
Well, so even before that, just a few notes. JBL, as this match is about to start, describes Staples Center as one of the world's great sports entertainment facilities, which I'm like, oh, okay. Also, JBL, I don't know how he got clearance from Vince in 2013 to do this. In the previous match, he references Dusty Rhodes as a multiple-time NWA world champion when talking about Cody. And then here he says that 45 years ago in this same city, Mil Mascaras won the WWA title.
He works over. Christian gets his arm worked over as Del Rio goes to put the arm bar on the injured arm, cross arm breaker style, and Christian has to tap out. The crowd, they really got the crowd about halfway through this match, and it turned into a pretty fun match.
I thought this was a great match given like what my expectations were going in. Like, I like Christian, Del Rio's fine. The third match, like the fact that this is for the big gold belt, the world title, and it's the third match on the card, like you clearly see this is just a geek belt. Like, this might as well be the silver ECW WWE belt. Yeah, the last, I don't know, 5-6 minutes of this were awesome.
Super
fun. They were going some great near falls. The crowd just absolutely loved Christian. And this is similar to when we talked about WWE ECW Christian, or just how insanely hard he was working. There was another match that he had on a pay-per-view that we reviewed a season or two ago for one of the undercard titles that he was awesome. Like, he was out to prove something. Yeah, this was super fun. It's it's also one of those, like, man, if Alberto Del Rio could have just not been Alberto Del Rio outside of the ring, that dude was such a great WWE character, and when he had his head screwed on straight, could really deliver in matches like this. Like, I don't have a single bad thing to say about this match. As a third match undercard title, as much as it kills me to say that about this belt. Like, the whole story was that Christian was coming back from shoulder surgery, and this may be his last chance ever at a world title, which is funny when you consider how his career has gone since then. But yeah, really fun match for me. The biggest surprise on this show.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Del Rio cuts a promo after. He says he is the person for Latinos to look up to. He's their hero in Los Angeles. This got some good heat.
He had also just fired Ricardo Rodriguez on TV, I believe like the week before, a couple weeks before, his personal ring announcer. So he does not have the personal ring announcing for this one.
We get highlights of Maria Menounos wrestling at Access. The Miz welcomes her out. Again, interrupted by Fandango and Summer Rae as they dance. Miz dances with Maria. Whole lot of whatever, nothing.
I am so hyped because the next thing we hear at the beginning of the music, oh my God, Bret Hart is on the show in 2013. Oh, wait, it was just the opening chords. It's Natalia and two human beings called the Funkadactyls. She is taking on Brie Bella. While all this is going on, the introductions for this are happening. Michael Cole is freaking out, losing his mind, practically screaming at the top of his lungs about the unprecedented success of the Total Divas television show. He then further defines this unprecedented success of the Total Divas television show by saying, quote, "It was the highest rated new show on E in 1 year." That is a very narrow description of the show's success. E, 1 year, the highest rated show. Like, what was the competition?
Was Talk Soup still on E?
yeah, that's about where the end of my my E fandom, if you want to call it that, goes. But yeah, that's just that had like really strong, like, please like my sport vibes, like you get a lot in hockey, where it's like, oh my god, like my sport. This is what that felt like.
The Funkadactyls were the dance team that would accompany Brodus Clay to the ring and dance.
Talk about former NWA world champions.
They are Cameron and Naomi. Naomi would go on to be a future WWE Women's Champion and marry one of the Usos. Natalia against Brie Bella here. Nikki Bella and Eva Marie are with her. This sucked. It went on way too long, and Natty wins with the sharpshooter.
Yeah, she hits a really bad spine buster, but then puts on a great sharpshooter. People are chanting, "We want Ryder, woo, woo, woo," during this match, to give you an idea of where people's heads were on this one.
Yeah, and poor Zack Ryder. Like, there's a guy who got over on his own.
It didn't matter.
They refused to steer into the popularity at all, and just never got to have that run.
So we go from that to,
oh god,
truly awful, truly hideous. Again, like a time capsule of what WWE was at this point in time. And this is one of those we've talked about before when we reviewed WWF or WWE shows. And there are some segments that are so clearly a window into the brain and the sense of humor, if you can even call that, of Vince McMahon. This one, I'm sure writers were involved. This is 100% a Vince McMahon segment. So there we see catering. Yoshitatsu, of all people, is in catering. Ryback confronts just some random dork who apparently works in catering, who is in line, tells him, "The catering sucks. Soup is cold." The guy says, "It's supposed to be cold. It's gazpacho." And like, their acting's even worse than mine here. Ryback says, "I knew that," and tells the guy, "Take it away." The guy is scared. So again, this is all happening very dramatically. Ugh. Ryback dumps the soup down the guy's shirt. It says he's just pathetic and helpless, like a 3-year-old. He dumps the rest of the soup on him, laughs, and says, "Feed me, moron." Again, a window
horrible
into the brain of Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
Ryback was a bad wrestler. He was a bad promo. He's a bad backstage actor. He's the example of the guy, if you do enough steroids, you will get enough chances to succeed after you fail and fail and fail.
You will initially succeed if a company gives you a Goldberg push. But
sure,
the second you have to do more than that and you don't have it, it's not there.
It's noticeable.
This just like, there's no, why was this on the show other than Vince wanted to see it on the screen? If this was like the segment equivalent of when Vince decided to name pay-per-view Great Balls of Fire because he wanted 6 weeks of TV of all the wrestlers saying Great Balls of Fire because he thought it was funny.
We get a recap of the Punk versus Lesnar storyline.
Thank God. Something we can sink our teeth into. This is CM Punk against Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar still not that far off of being MMA Brock Lesnar. He's got the MMA shorts. He still had that, that aura of dangerousness, that aura of real that you didn't really get in WWE, and the whole video features, Punk was a Paul Heyman guy. Paul Heyman managed him. Paul Heyman turned on him, knocked him off a ladder in Money in the Bank. And just after that, we see scenes of utter destruction over and over and over again in many different ways of Lesnar trying to obliterate CM Punk ahead of this match.
Yeah, this was great. Punk issues the challenge. He wants to get his hands on Heyman, and this is all about Punk trying to get revenge on Heyman, and Heyman hiding behind Lesnar to protect him. And just a little bit, the clips of Heyman and Punk having their success, and Punk being a Paul Heyman guy. What a great duo!
Oh, absolutely.
Just two guys made for each other. It's
there's
great.
big Bockwinkel Heenan vibes.
Yes.
When you see them together, in that, like, Bockwinkel did not need Bobby Heenan. Bockwinkel was a great promo, but the act was so elevated by having Bobby Heenan with him. Same thing here. Punk, great promo, didn't need Paul Heyman, but boy, did it take it to another level having him there. What he did need, though, different facial hair decision. My God, these mutton chops that he's got in 2013, I don't understand. What I also don't understand is this match is about to start. Michael Cole describes CM Punk. And I'll preface by saying, like, I knew Punk a little bit back in, like, 2004. We all know Punk. Everyone knows who CM Punk is, like him or not like him. Have you ever heard, or would you ever believe or take seriously the description that Michael Cole gives of CM Punk as, quote, the guy who is always loose and joking around in the locker room?
That was interesting for him to say. I always try to listen for when they say something weird, because it usually is being fed to them.
Oh, for sure.
And so there's usually some other context you have to try to read between the lines on.
Or it's just, there were years and years and years where Vince was constantly feeding the line to Michael Cole to say about, like, every babyface out how they just like to have fun. Kofi Kingston just likes to have fun, and that sort of thing. We hear that Lesnar, in the lead up to this match, gave Punk 4 stitches in his chin, injured his ribs, his knee, his ankle, and his arm, all going into that. That tracks when you see that video package. Heyman is great, just lurking and smiling at ringside as this match is about to start.
Yeah, we're reminded that CM Punk held the WWE title, for 434 days. That's a tremendous run for him to have been the champion there for that long. And
as always, like you mentioned earlier, when a guy like CM Punk or a guy like Bryan Danielson or Rey Mysterio back in the day prior to this, they may be the champion for a period of time. That doesn't mean they're always the focal point or even a focal point, but still, particularly in that era where titles are changing hands like crazy compared to now in WWE, that's an accomplishment.
He's super popular, gets a huge pop coming out, and the match is ready to begin. Lesnar charges Punk, overpowering him in the corner, beals him across the ring. Lesnar dominating early.
Beals him by the neck. Like, this is not like a big hip toss out of the corner that we call a beal. This is just by the neck. It is scary looking.
Punk rocks him with a kick and a knee. He knocks Lesnar to the floor. We get a tope by Punk, wiping out Lesnar on the outside.
Have we mentioned, like, the most important thing about this match, and it'll play into the ending? This is a no disqualification match. This is anything goes.
Punk grabs the steps, but Lesnar rams the steps into Punk. Lesnar gets posted by Punk. Double axe off the top to the floor. Punk channeling the Macho Man Randy Savage here.
It won't be the last time in this match. There'll be a point later in the match where he channels Randy Savage again, and the crowd chants Macho Man.
Yep.
or chants Randy Savage, and there is no reaction from the announcers. Clearly, Vince is telling them, do not acknowledge this at all. The other thing that I just in the early stages noted, like, CM Punk was never Will Ospreay level athletic by any means. Like, he's not he's a great wrestler, but you never call him a great athlete in the traditional sense. But it is wild to see just, 11 years prior to his return to WWE, or even as I'm wearing this CM Punk shirt from his AEW Rampage return, how much more like flexible and at least somewhat fluid he is in ring here in 2013, as opposed to modern times. Like, there's a lot of wrestlers you see on this show and you see them now 11, 12 years later, and they don't seem that different in terms of their ability to move or just physically. Punk, well, like body type wise, he doesn't look that different. Just movement is a world of difference.
Punk immediately sees Heyman. He starts stalking him, but Lesnar cuts him off. Lesnar beels Punk over the Spanish announce table.
He throws Punk over the ref onto and over the Spanish announce table. Brock then, as he walks over this scene, then picks Punk up and throws him over the English announce table, grabs the top piece of like thin wood that makes up the covering, like almost like the awning of the announce table, sets it on top of Punk, and then double stomps him on that piece of the table, then hits an overhead belly to belly on the floor. Punk is taking a beating here.
When Lesnar threw Punk onto that announce table, you can see where the monitors that are poking up out of the table, where they just raked across Punk's back. I'm like, ouch! I'm screaming watching this on the plane. And then later on, I'm keeping my eye on his back throughout this match, and it looks so much worse as the match goes on. And I'm like, that is exactly from the monitor shot there.
Well, you think about all the times where guys do announce table spots, and they always will pull the monitors,
clear the table.
That's why you do that. This was rough. Again, this whole match was rugged. Lesnar gets back in. Punk is in first, but he catches him coming in with a couple hard low kicks, but Brock immediately cuts Punk off with a big punch. Shoulder blocks in the corner to the stomach, which are like no other shoulder blocks in the corner to the stomach by any other wrestler. We then get a bear hug by Brock Lesnar as the crowd rallies behind CM Punk.
Punk elbows his way free, but Lesnar buries a knee to the gut to cut him off again.
Nasty. Paul Heyman mocking him and yelling, "Stay down." Brock Lesnar then yells, "Come on, baby girl," at CM Punk, and then hits a couple nasty MMA style knees to the downed Punk. Back to the bear hug, dead center of the ring. Again, Punk trying to elbow out. Finally,
those knee strikes on the mat were brutal. They're right to the ribs, and then he's like grinding the knee into the ribs of Punk at one point there.
Yeah, part of it is just because Lesnar doesn't pull his stuff as much as other like MMA influenced guys, but he's one of the few guys that like had an MMA background. I was in wrestling, went to MMA, came back to wrestling, would go back and forth, but that in a worked environment could throw those strikes and they still look devastating. A lot of times guys would be afraid to throw them because of, legit hurt the guy. Not as much Brock Lesnar. Punk, eventually gets out from behind, middle kick, goes to the top rope axe handle, but Brock catches him and hits a fall away slam. I did like, though, at this point, the line from King. This is like the only relevant line that Dre Lawler had in the entire show. He's just sort of musing aloud as Lesnar's beating down Punk, saying he wonders if Lesnar can take as much as he gives out. Which, like, that's always like the one thing with Lesnar, like you see in his big matches. Sometimes he'll either punch himself out or like he can't take as much as he gives out. It kind of reminded me of some of the story of the Vader Sting matches back in the day.
Yeah, Lesnar catching Punk out of midair, hitting that fallaway slam, just freaky strength. Like, it's crazy to watch. We take for granted how freaky strong Brock Lesnar is. We forget about some of the amazing things he does in the
just
ring.
Casually terrifyingly strong.
Punk's biting Lesnar. He's throwing some kicks. He goes to the top. Punk hits a knee to the face off the top rope. Brock with the glazed eyes. He's slumped in the corner. Punk catches Lesnar with a head kick. And then Punk drops the elbow off the top and gets a 2 count.
This elbow drop looked horrible.
Awful.
Punk's top rope elbow drops, like, no consistency. There were times where it would look really good and times where it would just look like like training school bad, and it's made worse by the fact he's doing the savage pose on the top rope, but which is cool. Like I appreciate the acknowledgement, but he could not hit that. Also, you had mentioned paying attention to the Punk's back after going onto the table with the monitors. His back is bleeding at this point.
Yeah, and I think that might have had some of he didn't want to take that full impact of that elbow drop.
Yeah.
The way his back was feeling there.
Totally understand.
Yeah, and then a GTS gets countered into a Kimura. Punk then counters to an armbar. Lesnar turns it into a triangle choke. Lesnar won't tap. He power bombs his way free, but no, Punk is still holding on to the triangle.
Yeah, the one arm power bomb where you're in the triangle and you pull up and do it. Still holds on. Paul is screaming, no! Brock is about to tap. And this is where we talk about maybe one of Brock Lesnar's most underrated traits as a wrestler is being this crazy, terrifying, scary monster. But when the time comes to sell and to look vulnerable, he is great at that as well.
Tremendous.
He is about to tap. The look of pain, and also his natural turning purple as he's exhausted regularly really works in this element. He's about to tap, but he picks up Punk. Punk starts elbowing from the powerbomb position, but then Brock hits the craziest running powerbomb you have ever seen. My notes just say, holy shit, what a match at this point. So we went from this was good. And then the moment we go from you talked to where Punk's going for the GTS, Brock gets out, goes for the F5, Punk slips out, high kick, we get the Kimura, the triangle. From that point forward, this just hits another stratosphere. This is action you're not used to seeing in really this or any era of WWE, this style of match at this point.
Yeah, and the crowd is going nuts. You get loud, "This is awesome" chants here. They're loving this. Loud CM Punk chants. We get rolling vertical suplexes by Lesnar for a 2 count. Lesnar grabs a chair. Punk comes off the top to the floor. Punk hits the chair. The chair hits Lesnar, and everybody's down.
I love this. This didn't look clean, meaning it didn't land perfectly, and that's great.
Yes.
One of my, it's just from growing up watching WWF, but growing up more on other wrestling. My big problem always was that WWF/WWE always looked too clean, too smooth. Nothing ever looked rugged. This was rugged, and the fact that it didn't land perfectly made it so much more impactful. Like you said, both men are down at this point. Punk gets up first, waffling him with the chair several times hard in the back. Back in, Brock catches the chair, goes for a chair shot of his own. Punk hits a low blow and then yells, "Where's your cup now, UFC boy?" Which was hilarious in the moment, and then even funnier when you think about what would happen with CM Punk competing in the UFC a few years later. Punk then follows this up with a Masato Tanaka style top rope chair elbow drop, only to another great near fall. Also insane that his regular elbow drop looked so bad, and then this looked awesome.
Punk with big chair shots to the back of Lesnar. Heyman grabs the chair from behind. Punk grabs Heyman. He gets his hands on him for the first time. Lesnar's right there, picks up Punk for the F5. Punk is grabbing onto Heyman, who's on the apron. Punk slips out, hits the go to sleep, and Heyman breaks up the pin at 2. He's yelling, "I'm sorry," as Punk chases Heyman.
Tremendous. This is there's really only a couple people in the world that could do this, and I wouldn't immediately check out of the match. It was so perfectly done from everyone involved.
Brock snatches Punk, goes for the F5, but Punk counters into a DDT for a 2 count. And then Punk slaps on the Anaconda Vice submission hold. Heyman's in the ring with a chair. Punk stops him by standing on the chair. Punk punches Heyman in the face and puts the Anaconda Vice on Heyman.
Heyman taps him oh my God, is this going to be that? Was it Super Brawl where it was Vader versus Hogan, and Flair was managing Vader, and Flair tapped out. However that played out. When Punk put that Anaconda Vice on, the place was absolutely unglued, going nuts, thinking that was a finish. Brock looking like he's going to tap. Brock's trying to like head scissor out from the bottom, but can't. And then that's when Heyman comes in, when it just, looks like there's no choice.
Lesnar kills Punk with a brutal chair shot like 3 times.
Yeah, one to the back, one to the arm, then a couple more. Brutal. It's like, okay, I can't do a chair shot to the head. Okay, well, I'll do the hardest chair shot imaginable to everything other than the head.
Lesnar hits the F5, Punk lands on the chair, and Lesnar gets the victory. This match was great. I loved everything about this match.
One of the best WWE/WWF matches I've ever seen. Obviously, we said how, like, with everyone involved, the stuff, the Heyman interference, like, it worked. That being said, with the way the match was going from the point of the sequence we described earlier through the end, if you didn't have that and you just had a clean finish, and particularly if Punk had somehow won this match, that story, like, that would be, to me, it would be like top 5 WWF WWE match of all time. Still, though, it's one of the best matches I've ever seen from that company. Just perfection.
Yeah, this was great. The story around the build was great. They did a great job catching you up on everything that happened to get you psyched for this match, and then delivered a match that was just such a different style from everything else on this show that you would see. And in WWE at the time, like, Brock Lesnar brought a different type of match to the WWE, and that's what made him so captivating.
And CM Punk brought a different type of match to Brock Lesnar.
Absolutely.
And that's what really, like, Lesnar is just sheer physicality, and Punk, particularly at that time, Punk's mind for putting together a match and just how over they both were. It made for something special. My only complaint about this was the really low energy call of the finish by Michael Cole. This match was completely nuts, and Cole was just really, I don't know, I just feel like he didn't meet the moment towards it. Like, he was fine through most of the match, but towards the end he didn't. And I just couldn't help but think of, like, how prime Jim Ross would have called that. Which, again, like, that's so much of post Jim Ross WWF when Cole's on the call, and you think, oh, like, this great match, how much more would have been elevated by having a real, still with this fastball Jim Ross on the call.
We see a random dude take a splash from Mark Henry to get VIP SummerSlam tickets.
This is such a weird segment. So it's a Doritos promotion. They're at, like, a house show in Portland a couple days before SummerSlam. They offer this guy tickets to SummerSlam if he's willing to take a splash from Mark Henry, but they take away his Portland house show tickets. They don't just it's like he has to make a trade. He can't go to the house show. He can only go to SummerSlam. And then, he's at Access, and he takes a splash from Mark Henry. And then they show him just getting right back up and laughing and being okay. I'm like, okay, so I don't ever need to see Mark Henry or take him seriously again after that. And then so him and his girlfriend and his friends are all now at SummerSlam, sat in chairs in front of the announcers ringside for this match coming up, sponsored by Doritos. It is mixed tag team action, which, if you listen to the bonus feed,
episode 200.
Milestone episode 200, where we had an episode of 1982 non-Mid-South Leroy McGurk television, where a mixed tag match was a full-size person and a little person teaming together. Here, this is mixed tag, men and women. It is Dolph Ziggler and a human being named Caitlin. I have no idea who this person is.
A diva search person, I assume.
Big E Langston. So this is what they're still calling him.
Last
Big
name.
E Langston had like a power lifter gimmick. He's got the chalk on his hands when he comes out, teaming with AJ Lee. Also,
the future wife of CM Punk.
Exactly. And by far the best women's wrestler in the company at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Like, by far, like, not even close. They're talking about how you can see highlights from all of WWE's shows. You can watch it on something called Plus, which you can get by going to Hulu.com. I have no recollection of Hulu not being called Hulu, even though you go to hulu.com and it's called Plus. This is very confusing. This match, I don't get it. Apparently, AJ Lee's gimmick was that she's crazy and she's dated everyone in the company, and Dolph Ziggler is one of the people she's dated. Her and Big E are just friends, but no one believes them. Every single time Dolph Ziggler does a single solitary thing, Cole has to yell, "The show off!"
Big E and Dolph gave it their all. They had great effort for being in the death spot here on this show between the two main event matches. They went out there and gave it their all. Dolph hits a zigzag from behind, gets the pin. Nothing much to talk about here.
Dolph, to me, though, is like he's the ultimate example. You talked about like Miz being a guy who's just the same guy in the same company forever. Dolph was that same way. Like, he's a very good wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
If Dolph Ziggler existed in an era where there were a ton of different places to go, the territory era, or even like, you know, when you had WWF was hot, WCW was hot, ECW was around, you know, Japan was around, like a guy like that could spend a year or 2 or 3 years top somewhere and then go somewhere else, no one would have had the same opinion or the same perception of Dolph Ziggler that they have. Like, oh God, it's this guy. We've seen him do this a million times. He's in this spot. He's a mid-carder for 15 years. Like, it just shows like from like the life cycle of what a pro wrestler is, like how unnatural this monopoly period of WWF was, where you had guys in the same company for 15, 20 years in the exact same spot as the exact same character, never moving up, never moving down, never changing, just existing. Like, the roster was so static for so long.
Yep. The Miz in the back finally punches Fandango. Who cares?
Yeah. The only thing about this that made me laugh is JBL in 2013 making a Chuck Woolery reference. I would expect this from like Jim Ross in 2024, 2025. This is weird.
Back to the panel, we get predictions for the WWE title match. The Miz says to Shawn Michaels, you trained Daniel Bryan, which always makes me love the quote from CM Punk where he says that Shawn Michaels took a couple $1,000s from Daniel Bryan, but William Regal actually trained Daniel Bryan.
Yeah, exactly. The TWA, not as instrumental in the training of Bryan Danielson as one would expect. The only thing that I thought was noteworthy about this or any of the roundtable segments was Shawn Michaels, like at the end, like just shouts out Brock Lesnar and CM Punk. He was clearly legitimately extremely impressed by that match.
So Dave Meltzer, Wrestling Observer Newsletter, reports that John Cena will be undergoing surgery shortly after the SummerSlam show for a partially torn left tricep, which led to fluid buildup that looked like a baseball was implanted in his left elbow.
Even as we see this match, as we get into it in a few minutes, he's got this giant elbow pad, this giant sleeve, and even with that, like it looks like he's got like a second elbow in his elbow.
The WWE Championship, the challenger Daniel Bryan, the champion John Cena. Triple H is your guest referee. Babyface Triple H, I might add.
Babyface Triple H with like a really generic, like 2-week-old buzz cut. This is like the least star I've ever seen Triple H look like.
We get the video recap. Cena got to pick his own opponent. He picked Daniel Bryan. Vince McMahon comes out and cuts a promo calling him a dwarf.
And a troll. Seeing Vince McMahon doing Mr. McMahon, Vince McMahon things with Bryan Danielson in the ring. For someone like me who was such a massive Bryan Danielson fan all through his time getting into WWE, but seeing very little of him in WWE in real time and having no recollection of this at all, seeing like Vince McMahon, heel authority figure, interacting in ring with Bryan Danielson is just bizarre. They say they're going to, Wade Barrett and Vince McMahon say they're going to shave off the beard of Bryan Danielson as the final part of his makeover. Also, there's some guy in the ring in a lot of these segments. He's in the ring with Cena, and Cena picks Bryan Danielson to wrestle. He's in the ring with Vince and Wade Barrett during this. I'm watching this. I'm like, I pride myself, even on territories or promotions I don't watch a ton of, like knowing who everyone is and having a general sense of what the stories are. I have zero recollection of this man. I have no earthly idea who this guy is. They finally at some point say his name is Brad Maddox.
That is correct.
This like such a nondescript guy, and he's in there as this like de facto authority figure with like all of the biggest stars in professional wrestling. It's so weird.
Yeah, his like big debut push came as like the crooked referee for the CM Punk Ryback match.
Oh my god.
That was like the build up to Ryback's big Goldberg push. He got the title match against Punk in a cage, and Brad Maddox is the crooked referee in that match that cost Ryback the match.
Okay. So he's
and
Danny
then the
Davis,
Shield
basically
debuted in that same show. So
I see. No notes, I will say as well, Jeremy. That's impressive.
No, that's just things I know. Sorry, ladies, I'm married. Triple H ended up pedigreeing Maddox, and he took the spot as guest referee. We did get a great promo battle at the end of this between Cena and Daniel Bryan, which I highly enjoyed. That was really good.
I love Bryan saying, I don't want to be a parody. I'm in it for the wrestling, which I found really amusing because Bryan Danielson has since said that, you know, a lot of his time in WWE, he like the way he could make sense of it because it was so just foreign and alien to his concept of professional wrestling is that he basically convinced himself and looked at like he was in a parody of pro wrestling. That's what WWE was. That's how he sort of got through it intellectually, I guess.
Cena is booed out of the building here. People want Daniel Bryan, and
he's booed out of the building, but it's the dichotomy that we always hear where like he's booed, but at the same time you hear this chorus of boos. You hear the women and the children screaming for him. It's just such a fascinating breakdown of the audience.
He will lose them as this match goes on. And as Daniel Bryan like the boos become almost unanimous here.
Yes.
Like Cena, you mentioned the large brace on his elbow. The story of the match early is Bryan out wrestling Cena. Cena has to keep bailing out to the floor as Bryan is out wrestling him early. He checks in with the ringside doctor as well.
Which, seeing that CM Punk is on this show and that's Dr. Amin, however it's pronounced, the ringside doctor of lore in many a podcast. I was like, oh man, there's a confluence of events happening that no one realized it's rolling down the tracks here that still is reverberating to this day in professional wrestling. Michael Cole describes this match as the wrestler versus the entertainer. You mentioned the crowd on Cena, loud "you can't wrestle" chants for Cena, and Cena's reaction is great. Just the way he looks out to the crowd and just sort of like talk about it as the match goes on. Like Cena is a guy that, because I didn't watch a lot of WWE really at all, like the only match I remember seeing of Cena's that I really aggressively liked in like near real time was one of the Umaga matches. I remember seeing like people on like the Death Valley Driver forum were like comparing it to Vader Sting, and I was like, I was so ready to be like, how dare you? And then I watch him like, I can kind of see it. Guy is freaking really good at being John Cena, and
so good,
and not just the character, but like he's the classic guy that like he's not like if you put him in there with Damian Sandow, he can't have a good or great or even really passable match with Damian Sandow. But you give that guy something to sink his teeth into, like promo wise, and then you give him a really good wrestler, and every single time. Remember that like the match with AJ Styles when Styles first came in, like so many matches, so many of the matches we've seen on this podcast where it's like I 100% admit like that's a guy that because I didn't like the character and I didn't like the promotion. For a long time did not give him the credit or really see how good he actually was.
No, just think of the matches we've seen on this podcast. We saw the 1 hour match with Shawn Michaels on
from
Raw.
Raw.
That was awesome. We saw the Money in the Bank WWE Championship match from Chicago against CM Punk. And like, he is, like you mentioned, when he's got something to sink his teeth into and he's got somebody to wrestle with, he can do his match in a way that is elevated and is extremely satisfying, and he is so good that he's always lumped into like, you can't wrestle John Cena, but man, the guy has had so many matches that I've really enjoyed that he's been in them.
I can't think of him having a bad match with a great wrestler.
No.
And like, for a guy that sort of had the reputation of like, oh, he can't wrestle. Like what he isn't, like, I preface this by saying like, maybe it's because the age I was at was Sting versus him. Like I never resonated with the character John Cena like I did with Sting, but he's Sting. It's the closest to be intergenerational comp of any wrestler, two wrestlers of the modern era, right down to the bodybuilding background, you know, the super baby face, the fact that like, when they were in a big match against a big man, they'd bust out crazy moves that they'd never do. Like Sting would do like crazy rolling kicks. Cena does that crazy top rope Sicilian slice. Like it's 100% the comp.
That's a perfect comp. No, I love it. Bryan catches Cena with a dragon screw,
which Cole calls a leg lace takedown.
Cena powers out of a Romero special attempt, goes for the attitude adjustment, but Bryan slides out to the apron. Cena checks Bryan off the apron, and he goes flying into the announce table.
Crowd did not like this. More loud, you can't wrestle chants. Bryan Danielson, I'm sorry, I can't call him Daniel Bryan. I just can't.
Sure.
I can't bring myself to do it. I respect those.
I will end up going back and forth as I do it here, but yeah.
In honor of Jim Ross, but he is just unbelievably over, just beloved, absolutely beloved by this crowd.
On the outside, Cena suplexes Bryan off the steps onto the floor. Back inside, Cena in control, hits a sit-out power bomb for 2.
This is what I'm talking about. Cena, he hits a Liger bomb here. You would never see this. Cena hit something like this in like a random match on Raw, again, like with the likes of Damian Sandow. But here in a big pay-per-view main event, he busts out all the cool stuff. At the same time this is happening, Michael Cole talks about the young career of Daniel Bryan, of Bryan Danielson, who is a 14-year veteran by this point. This brought me great joy because it reminded me of Gorilla Monsoon talking about that fiery youngster Carlos Colon coming out of the Royal Rumble, who was fiery, but he sure as hell wasn't a youngster. Then here, everybody. So this is clearly a Vince thing. Cole, JBL, and King, all in like quick succession, call Danielson, quote, the high-flying goat.
So weird.
And there's a couple times also where
this is before goat meant the greatest of all time.
Yes.
This is before the kids had goat.
And they also call him a pit bull a couple times, which that's always a tell that it's a Vince line, because whenever there's a smaller guy, even if he's jacked, even if his character is an underdog, Vince, he's a pit bull. He's a pit bull. Remember when that's what they were calling when AJ Styles first came in, and the announcers kept having to call him a pit bull.
Danielson fights back with big kicks in the corner, flips out of the corner, clothesline Cena. Bryan laying in more stiff kicks to the chest. A missed roundhouse kick, and Cena hits his tackle, and he teases the 5-knuckle shuffle to a chorus of boos. And this is where he steers into the I'm the heel in this match, and people don't want to see my shtick, and I'm going to force it down your throat, and I love it.
I'm going to give it to like the 20% of people that like it. I'm going to really give it to the people, the 80% that don't like it. He's, again, like you said, he's really soaking in the boos here, slowly sets up the shuffle, but Danielson hits an up kick to break it up, gets Cena down. Cena rolls through to go for the STF. Bryan kicks him off. Cena hits another Blue Thunder. He had just hit one prior. That was always the setup for the 5-knuckle shuffle. He hits it this time. Crowd does not like it. goes for the AA, which is formerly known as the FU, which is the world's. You can look at it in two ways. It's either the world's safest Death Valley driver or the world's most impactful fireman's carry takeover. Either way, it fits. The thing that I noted is like, this is a frenetic pace for the start of this match for a WWE Championship match, main event, which you expect is going to go a decent amount of time. They are moving like there is no downtime here.
Yeah, he goes for the AA, but Bryan flips over, goes to the top rope. Bryan hits a shotgun dropkick for a 2 count. We see Cena's eye is swelling. He got hit with something.
Yeah, it's like a hematoma under the eye, so it's not quite as bad, but it's starting to swell. I also noted at this point, like, we're like, whatever, 10 minutes into this match, and I finally noticed that Triple H was the referee. I'm like, man.
Yeah,
like,
he's doing nothing, like blending in the background.
Blending in the background, like as a babyface guest referee, which is always strange. But, like, he also is a legitimately great referee. Like, his counts are great. Like, his admonishments are there, but they're not really over the top. He's not distracting at all.
Not at all.
I was very impressed, with him as a referee, legitimately, not kayfabe. He was totally I always go back to having to watch Ole Anderson as a troubleshooting referee when I first started going to WCW shows in 1992. And it was just painful and it stood out. It just distracting so because he was so bad. Not at all the case here with Triple H.
Bryan now goes after the elbow. He's kicking Cena in the arm. Cena gets countered into the yes lock, which is the label lock. He puts it on. Bryan pulls him to the middle, but Cena is standing while Bryan has his foot still. So Bryan just turns it into German suplexes. This was an awesome sequence.
You talking the spider German suplex
yes.
off the top?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Bryan Danielson, who spent time both in the Inoki Dojo in LA, the original LA dojo, and then also spent time in 2004 in New Japan, where then Shinya, soon to be Togi Makabe, was, and that was one of Makabe's big moves. It was always the big spider German hitting the top rope knee drop. So, I also love Michael Cole, who you don't think it was necessarily a great wrestling analyst here, made a great point saying that this is a strategic thing. Danielson, by doing this, he delivers all the impact of a superplex without having to absorb the impact of falling to the mat delivering the superplex.
Yeah, we get a lot of good highlights here where Cena escapes and Bryan puts on a guillotine at one point. He powers up to his feet and has to backdrop his way free. He hits the attitude adjustment. And everyone kind of takes the air out of the place. There's a little bit of a buzz and a murmur, and Bryan kicks out at 2, and the place goes crazy with yes chants. They believe with this kick out that he may have a chance to win the championship.
And this is still at a very fast pace for WWE and for a WWE main event match. It felt to me very intentional that they were pushing the pace. This is also the point where, again, I hate to keep going back to the Vince fed lines, but Michael Cole will not shut up talking about how pugnacious Danielson is. He says it over and over and over. At one point, there's Daniel Bryan chants here, and you can hear them trying to turn down the crowd noise at that point. They're not putting in the Thunder Heat Machine or the Thunderdome Heat Machine, as you would say in modern times. They are trying to turn down the Daniel Bryan chants.
After the spider German suplex we described there, we get a diving headbutt off the top, gets a 2 count. Cena rolls out to the floor. This is where Bryan goes for a tope, but Cena hits him with a forearm to cut him off, and Cena goes to the top rope and busts out the top rope Sicilian slice, as you described, that leg drop off the top. Very impressive looking. He got a ton of height here. They showed a million replays in slow motion. This was a really impressive move.
He had to have gone 2/3 the way across the ring. Ton of height, ton of distance. And it's always so weird because we've talked about before how just mechanically Cena is so wonky and clunky sometimes with the way he throws his punches, the way he delivers certain things. And then this was just beautiful athleticism.
Cena goes for a top rope attitude adjustment, but Bryan elbows his way free. We get loud yes chants with every elbow. Bryan tries a top rope Rana, but Cena holds him. And he drops down off the top and slaps on an STF. I swear I thought Cena might go for a Styles Clash from this position.
That would have been safer than what actually happened. So, like, this was such a weird spot because it's as you described. Cena stops this top rope Frankensteiner in midstream and, like, jumps off the top rope, like, in basically Styles Clash position, but doesn't go face first to the mat because, again, his idea is I'm going to jump off and hold him and catch him in this Boston Crab. But in the process, he spikes Danielson right on his head, and the crowd immediately goes like, "Oh, like it's a good spot." But then they immediately realize, like, "Oh, this isn't actually like what was supposed to happen," and they're not going to sell it. They're just going into a Boston Crab. It was a really terrifying and weird spot, and a really unique reaction to it from the crowd.
Bryan is fading in the STF. Bryan counters, gets a yes lock on. Cena gets the ropes. Bryan hits running kicks to the corner, but Cena comes out of the corner and turns Bryan inside out with a clothesline. They trade shots and collide. We get a double down. They're both down in the ring. Cena slaps Bryan hard in the face, and they have a slap battle in WWE in 2013. Jesus, I couldn't believe it. Bryan wins the slap battle.
This was so not WWE 2013. No. This was like Ishii 2013, never open weight, like just starting to come up the card after so many years in New Japan. This was very interesting because there were times in this match where it was a John Cena match, but this also felt like a lot more than usual for Bryan Danielson matches in WWE. Like, this was more of a Bryan Danielson match than he almost ever got to do in that company. This was awesome.
Bryan tries to do the flip out of the corner again, but Cena grabs him, tries to muscle him up for an attitude adjustment. Bryan counters into another DDT. Bryan to the top. He comes off the top. He dives but gets caught. Cena throws him up into the attitude adjustment. Bryan counters again with a cradle for a 2 count. We get a huge kick to the head of Cena. The building is chanting yes as Bryan hits the running knee, the Busaiku knee, and Daniel Bryan gets the pin. Wow, that match was really good. This was so much fun. Daniel Bryan celebrating the new WWE champion. We get confetti. We get the huge fun celebration. And then Randy Orton's music hits.
Well, so clean as a whistle.
Yep.
Bryan Danielson beats John Cena dead center of the ring after this awesome match. It honestly felt like it could have even gone 5 minutes longer and hit an even higher peak, but this was great stuff. Crazy frenetic pace. Unbelievable match. No guest referee BS. Nope. Totally clean. Like, this is the weirdest, like the most welcome, but weirdest finish to a WWE pay-per-view I can remember. Like, this is what I want out of pro wrestling. And I, for my taste, very rarely say that at the end of a WWF or WWE pay-per-view. So it's, the whole post-match sequence. Cena shakes Danielson's hand. Triple H shakes his hand. The announcers keep yelling out the beard is here because, again, it's not enough to be mega over organically. They had to try to shoehorn that in. Big fireworks celebration keeps going into them. My notes just say, I'm a little bit leery. Triple H.
Because Triple H is hanging out.
Being in the ring. This man, glory hound, this man is just hanging out, being nice. And that does not, the Triple H character, this is not what he does. Then you hear Randy Orton's music, and they say, here comes Mr. Money in the Bank, Randy Orton.
We saw Damian Sandow earlier as Money in the Bank.
Were there multiple monies in the bank?
Apparently so.
For each show, that's kind of overkill.
Extremely. And he comes out, Orton comes down, he's got his briefcase. He teases cashing it in, but then starts to walk away, and he's walking back up the ramp. And at this point, Triple H hits the pedigree. Daniel Bryan in the ring. Randy then hits the ring, gives the briefcase to Triple H. Randy pins Bryan Danielson in 7 seconds and is the new WWE champion.
It's also, some symmetry when you think back to the low point of the Daniel Bryan character in the WWE, I should say, was, whatever it was, losing in like 30 seconds at WrestleMania to Sheamus.
Yeah.
Here he loses the title in 7 seconds after finally winning the title, finally overcoming everything, beating John Cena. He has it ripped away, snatched away. Orton doesn't hit a move. I kind of just, because Orton, the character, is just such a snake, dare I say. I would have loved Orton to pick him up and just for the hell of it, hit him with the RKO, even though he obviously didn't need to. But yeah, this, it's like, I get the idea. This was 100%, what they were doing. And if you want to get even more heat behind Danielson, I guess you do that. But man, just as someone who's wasn't a WWE fan at the time, wasn't invested in the WWE story, man, like that just felt like that negated everything we just saw. And I know that's what they did it for that reason, but
the reason was never to come back to Danielson winning the title. It was to be Triple H and Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania.
Well, then now I'm even more mad. I'm mad.
Triple H turned heel here, and he was going to wrestle Daniel Bryan, and then the main event was going to be Batista and Randy Orton for the WWE title at WrestleMania 30.
That's right.
So yeah, it was so like where it ended up going makes it more satisfying, but knowing where they wanted to go, well,
it makes it even more frustrating watching this, knowing that that's what their plan was. That there was no plan for this to be something that was going to, again, get more juice behind Danielson, as if he needed any more juice. It was just give his moment, take it away, and then let's transition into the real guys, basically.
Right. And what they needed was a short-term successor to work as the babyface on all of the house shows, all of the TV, and do everything to carry the company while Cena was out, and that was going to be Daniel Bryan here. So they put him in that position, and Cena did a tremendous job in putting Daniel Bryan in that position. Like he went out, he didn't steal the spotlight like you mentioned. He put him over like $1 million. He did everything he could to, and to his credit, we put over how well he did in that match. He was working with an extremely painful tricep injury.
We talked at the beginning. We didn't talk about at all throughout. Like I can't think of it. Again, I haven't seen every great John Cena match, but I can't think of a more impressive performance when you think of the injury that he was working through, and then Danielson was one of the best wrestlers in the world. No one doubts that. But what he did for Danielson to make WWE fans see him at that level, like no strings attached. There was nothing about his performance in that match being Cena that was at all about getting himself over in the end, or the classic. I think of like Hogan, Billy Kidman. Okay, well, yeah, you're gonna beat me, but that doesn't mean I put you over. Like that's not what this was. Bryan Danielson beat John Cena, and he was put over by John Cena, regardless of what happened in the aftermath.
No, John Cena's a company guy, and he wanted to make sure that there was a babyface to take his spot, and he did everything he could to make Daniel Bryan be that guy.
And he didn't try to pull rank and say, well, let's, whatever guy that came up just straight through the WWE system, that's the guy I'm going to put over. Like he saw this, is he great? But this is the guy that's the most over. This is so clearly the guy to put in this spot while I'm gone, and he did everything humanly possible and then some to make it happen.
One final fun fact, and then we'll get into the best and worst of the show. Fun fact: Tetsuya Naito was at this show. He was a fan in the crowd.
This would have been, which is a fascinating time for him when you think about Stardust Genius Naito, then going to Mexico and coming back and becoming Gobernable. That whole deal. Like we're right in the middle of that. It's crazy to think he was there.
So going to Los Angeles, easy. So, favorite thing on this show for you?
I mean, it's the Punk match. It's the Danielson match. It's funny because like the Danielson match was awesome. Danielson Cena was great. I do think that like the body of the Punk Lesnar match was even better, but the finish again, before all the stuff with the Money in the Bank with Orton, the finish of Danielson and Cena was so much more satisfying to me. But like, I cannot think of any main roster WWE show that's had 2 matches at that level on the same show. I can't think of it at all.
No, we got lucky. The randomizer of all the SummerSlams it could have pulled, it did us a solid this week.
The randomizer has a dark sense of humor sometimes, which we've talked about before, like taking the week before, the week after, like an all-time great episode of weekly TV from a promotion or territory, or taking like the year after, like the pay-per-view version, like year after of the great one the year before. Not the case here. I mean, we had 2 truly great matches. And then we mentioned it earlier, a really fun, unexpected,
Christian
awesome
Alberto Del Rio,
undercard title match with Alberto Del Rio and Christian. That was such a fun match. And honestly, on a lot of the WWE/WWF pay-per-views, particularly this like, mid 2000s on, that Del Rio Christian match would have been my favorite match on a lot of shows we've seen from this company.
Worst thing on this show for you?
Probably the Doritos guy taking the splash.
That's so weird to see in the middle of a show that I'm watching. Like,
with the guy that I know, it's like Mark Henry is not super pushed at this point, but still, like the Mark Henry splash was always pushed as death, and then we see this scrawny office worker, kind of unlikable dork. If you're listening, if you're a patron, thank you, but I don't think he is. Yeah, it was just weird. The Ring of Fire match was
mine.
Not good. Like if you had in your mind, this is like the visual of like the Sheik and Sabu and in FMW. No.
It just had to. I don't know if it was the last ever fire match, but it had to be, because you literally killed the gimmick of like no one can get in the ring, because like you just put a blanket over it and walked right in, and like so. I hope it was the last one, but because it was terrible. It's a terrible.
I don't have faith that it was, given some of the decision making in the company around this era, but yeah, that wasn't great. But honestly, like for a early 2010s WWE pay-per-view to have 2 like all-time great matches in terms of like in the pantheon of that promotion, like those are 2 all-time great matches in main roster WWE history, and then another like a legitimately great undercard match, which you didn't often get in WWE. Like this was awesome. This was a fun watch.
A great show. We mentioned some other SummerSlams that you can also listen to us review. Patreon.com/Wrestling at Random. That's where you can get over 200 additional episodes of this podcast. If you are new to the podcast here, you've got over 5 seasons. We're in season 6 right now of free episodes that you can listen to right now in the way you're listening to this show. The entire back catalog of this podcast is available. WrestlingAtRandom.com has all of those links. And, of course, follow us on all the social media platforms at Wrestle at Random on Blue Sky, X, Instagram, anywhere social media is, you can find us there as well. It's the best way to interact with the show as well. We love to hear about your experiences with the shows we review. So no matter where you are in the back catalog, drop us a Blue Sky post or an X post or whatever Instagram message. We do want to hear from you. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Oh, make sure you also go to the YouTube channel. I forgot about that.
Yes.
Over YouTube, go search for Wrestling at Random Podcast. That's the video version of this podcast. And even if you don't consume your podcast through the video medium, you can like and subscribe. It helps us work the algorithm so that we can find other wrestling fans and they can find our show. And you can see that CM Punk shirt that Adam was talking about.
Yes, which shout out if he's listening to my friend Garrett, who while we were at that show, there's not a lot of great wrestling on that episode of Rampage, the first ever episode of Rampage, or was it the first or second, whatever it was. Where Punk came out. He waited in line for like an hour and a half to get a shirt for himself and also a shirt for me. So shout out to him. You not only got me the shirt, but you helped make this podcast better, because otherwise I had nothing relevant to wear for this show whatsoever. I don't know. My closet is not full of WWE 2013 shirts.
I just put out some old LJN figures in the background here for this. So
beautifully displayed, I might add.
And with that, we are going to wrap it up and call it a podcast. Adam, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Randomizer. And I have to go take a shower after this, but thank you, WWE. This was a hell of a show. Super fun watch. And yeah, we'll see what the Randomizer brings us next week.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening. And we'll talk to you again next time.